I was passing the potato salad when my cousin's wife leaned in and whispered, "You're handling this well." I frowned. Handling what? She hesitated, eyes flicking toward my husband, who was suddenly pale as a ghost. Then she said it. The affair. My stomach clenched. A fork clattered to a plate. My husband wouldn't meet my eyes. This is a story of betrayal, self-worth, and the moment everything changes forever. Before we get into the story, let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe. If you had asked me a month ago, I would have told you I had a good marriage. Solid. Nothing dramatic, nothing messy. Daniel and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. We had a routine, an understanding. Love. At least, I thought we did. I wasn't the kind of woman who second-guessed things. I trusted my gut, and my gut had always told me that Daniel was a good man. A little absent-minded sometimes, a little too into his work, but still good. That's why, when I noticed the first few cracks, I did what any reasonable person would do, I ignored them. It started small. A couple of late nights at the office. No big deal, right? Daniel was an accountant, and tax season always had him buried in paperwork. He'd come home exhausted, barely mumble goodnight before crashing into bed. Then came the phone. Daniel had never been glued to his phone before. If anything, he was the kind of guy who left it on silent and forgot where he put it. But suddenly, it was always in his hand. Always face down on the table. One night, I was turning off the living room lights when I saw his phone screen light up on the counter. I wasn't snooping. I was just noticing. And what I noticed was a text preview. "Can't wait to see you." My stomach dropped. I wasn't stupid. I knew what that sounded like. But I told myself there had to be an explanation. A coworker? A friend? Maybe someone had the wrong number. I should have asked him. I should have called him over and made him look me in the eye. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed the weird feeling creeping up my spine and went to bed. That night, Daniel came home past midnight. When he climbed into bed, I could smell it. Perfume. Not mine. I shifted under the blankets, my pulse in my throat. "You smell different." He let out a half-laugh, half-yawn. "What?" "The perfume," I said. "It's not mine." He was quiet for a beat too long. Then, "Oh yeah. Someone at the office was passing out perfume samples. You know how those mall people get." That didn't make sense. He worked in a corporate office. There were no mall kiosks lurking around accountants. I turned to face him, trying to make out his expression in the dim light. "Who was it?" He yawned again, turning on his side. "I don't know, Em. Some lady. I wasn't paying attention." And that was it. He fell asleep. Just like that. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after that. I told myself it was nothing. That I was being paranoid. That after 10 years together, I knew my husband. But deep down, I felt it. Something was wrong. And I was about to find out just how wrong. The next morning, I woke up before Daniel. That wasn't unusual. I was a light sleeper, and he could sleep through a hurricane. But this time, I just lay there, staring at him. His face was relaxed, his breathing steady. He looked like the man I married. The man I trusted. But my chest still felt tight. That text message. The perfume. The way he brushed it off like I was imagining things. I wanted to shake him awake and demand the truth. Instead, I got up, made coffee, and threw myself into the one thing I could control, our family reunion. The Hopper family reunion was a big deal. Every year, someone different hosted it, and this time, it was my turn. Weeks of planning had gone into it, food, decorations, making sure there were enough folding chairs for the aunts and uncles who complained about their backs. I told myself I didn't have time to sit around worrying about Daniel's phone habits. By noon, we were loading the car. I double-checked the food, making sure I had everything. "Are you sure you don't want to bring an extra cooler?" I asked. "I don't want the potato salad to go bad." Daniel barely glanced up from his phone. "It'll be fine." He didn't offer to help carry anything, just climbed into the driver's seat. I stood there for a second, staring at him through the windshield, then shook it off and got in. We drove in silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that made my stomach twist. When we pulled up to my aunt's house, everything looked normal. Kids were running around the yard, coolers were lined up on the back porch, and the smell of barbecue hung in the air. I forced myself to smile. This was supposed to be a fun day. A family day. I would not spend it dissecting my husband's every move. At least, that's what I told myself. The looks. The first person I noticed was Jason. My younger cousin, always the first to make a joke, always the last to back down from an argument. He was standing by the grill, beer in hand, watching us. No, watching Daniel. I frowned. "Hey Jason." I called, forcing a smile. He grinned back, but it wasn't his usual grin. It was tighter. Like he knew something I didn't. Before I could ask, my Aunt Linda swept me into a hug, talking a mile a minute about how good everything looked, and just like that, I was pulled into the chaos of hosting. But something was off. A few relatives kept giving me weird looks. You know the kind, like they were waiting for me to say something first. And it wasn't just them. Every time I looked over at Daniel, he was on his phone. Typing. Deleting. Typing again. I didn't want to be that wife. The one who hovered, the one who made a scene at a family gathering. So I stayed busy pouring drinks, setting out napkins, making small talk. Then Jason walked by and clapped Daniel on the back. "Man Dan, you've got some explaining to do." Daniel stiffened. I froze. "What does that mean?" I asked. Jason's eyes flickered to me. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, then closed it just as fast. "Nothing. Just messing around." But he wouldn't meet my eyes. I felt a rush of heat crawl up my neck. "No. Not here. Not now." I shoved the feeling down, turning away. But the unease sat heavy in my stomach. The whispers. I saw Olivia standing by the back fence, away from the noise. My best friend. The one person who would tell me the truth, no matter what. I made my way over. "Liv." She turned, and something in her expression made my breath catch. She knew. "Are you okay?" she asked, like she already knew the answer. Why wouldn't I be? My voice was too high, too light. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Never mind." I grabbed her wrist. "Liv, what is going on?" She bit her lip, eyes darting toward Daniel. He was still on his phone, not paying attention to us. "Emily," she sighed. "I think you should talk to Melanie." Melanie. Jason's wife. The one who always saw everything. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to ask. But I knew I had to. Because suddenly, it felt like I was the only one at this reunion who didn't know something. And that scared me more than anything. I found Melanie by the drink table, refilling a cup of lemonade. She was mid-laugh with one of my aunts when she spotted me. Her face shifted, just for a second, but I caught it. A flicker of hesitation. She knew. I swallowed hard and walked up to her. "Can we talk?" Melanie glanced around like she was checking to see who was watching. Then she gave a small nod and set her cup down. "Yeah. Let's go inside." The moment we stepped into the kitchen, away from the noise of the reunion, the air changed. It was cooler in here, but I still felt like I couldn't breathe. I folded my arms. "What's going on?" Melanie sighed and leaned against the counter. "Emily, are you sure you want to do this right now?" That was the moment I knew. I felt it in my chest, in my stomach, in the way my hands went cold. "Just tell me," I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Melanie rubbed her forehead. "You don't know, do you?" I just stared at her. She sighed again. "Emily, Daniel's been having an affair." The words slammed into me like a punch to the gut. I actually took a step back. "What?" Melanie's face softened. "I thought you knew." I shook my head. I couldn't make sense of it. The room felt too bright, too sharp. "That's not no. No, he wouldn't." She didn't look surprised. Just sad. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you," she said, watching me carefully. "But everyone here already knows." I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The walls of the kitchen felt like they were closing in, but I forced myself to take a breath. I clung to the one thing that could make this untrue. There has to be a mistake. My voice was shaking. Who told you this? Melanie hesitated. Then she looked me dead in the eyes and said, her. I blinked. Who? She glanced toward the window, out at the backyard, then back at me. Her name's Vanessa. The name meant nothing to me. She works with Daniel, Melanie continued, her voice careful. She didn't know he was married at first. He told her later, after they were already involved. She hesitated, then said, she thought he was going to leave you. I shook my head again. No, Emily. No. I took a step back, my voice rising. Daniel wouldn't do this. He wouldn't. Melanie bit her lip, and that's when I saw it. The thing she'd been holding back. There's more, she said quietly. I didn't want to hear it. I already couldn't breathe. But I forced the words out. What? Melanie swallowed. Vanessa told someone that Daniel called you just a bump in the road. Silence. A heavy, aching silence. The words crashed into me so hard I thought I might actually be sick. Just a bump in the road. A meaningless obstacle. Something in the way. Something to get over. I pressed a hand against the counter, trying to steady myself. I was shaking. Melanie's voice was softer now. I'm sorry, Em. I barely heard her. The words were still playing over and over in my head. Just a bump in the road. I felt something inside me break. But before I could say anything, before I could do anything, I heard the sound of a fork clattering against a plate outside. A sharp silence followed. Then a voice, my cousin's wife, Lisa. I think she knows. My stomach dropped. I turned toward the window. The entire backyard was staring at the kitchen. At me. My hands curled into fists. They all knew. And they'd been watching, waiting to see how I'd react. I wasn't just the last to find out. I was the spectacle. My heart pounded. My whole body felt like it was buzzing. And then, I moved. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was marching across the yard, straight toward Daniel. The world had gone quiet. I didn't hear the laughter, the conversations, the clinking of plates and glasses. I didn't hear anything except the pounding in my chest and the sharp, ragged edge of my own breathing. Daniel was standing near the grill, mid-conversation with my uncle. He was holding a beer, his grip relaxed, his body loose like he didn't have a single worry in the world. Like he hadn't just been exposed. Like he hadn't been lying to me for God knows how long. I walked straight up to him, ignoring the way people shifted, the way the crowd pulled back, creating a space around us like they could already feel the storm coming. Daniel saw me. He must have seen something in my face, because his expression flickered. Emily, he said, half smiling, half confused. What's? How long? My voice cut through the air like a blade. Daniel blinked. What? I took another step closer. I wasn't shouting, but my voice was dead steady. How long? His smile wavered. Don't lie. My pulse was roaring in my ears, but my words came out so clear, so sharp. Everyone here already knows. So how long, Daniel? The whole yard was frozen. Daniel let out a weak chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. Geez, can we not do this here? I stared at him. Not here. Not now. Not in front of all these people. I let out a short breath, almost a laugh. You weren't worried about doing it when you were sneaking around behind my back. His jaw clenched. Emily. Was it months? I kept my voice calm. Years. He sighed, glancing around like he was looking for an exit. Can we just? Did you love her? Silence. Something in his face twitched. And then, he shrugged. I felt something snap inside me. A shrug. I whispered. That's all you have? Daniel sighed like I was being dramatic. Like I was inconveniencing him. Emily, I don't know what you want me to say. I stared at him. My husband. The man I had spent the last 10 years loving, supporting, trusting. The man I had built a life with. And now, standing here in front of all our family, all our friends, he was acting like this was nothing. Like I was nothing. And that's when I remembered. You're just a bump in the road. My heart pounded. I took a slow, steady breath. You told her I was just a bump in the road, I said. Daniel's face dropped. I saw it, the flinch, just for a second. And then, his expression hardened. His voice was low, sharp. Where'd you hear that? I let out a breath. So it's true. His jaw tensed. He didn't say anything. People were watching, holding their breath. And Daniel had the audacity to roll his eyes. Emily, can we not do this here? He said it like I was the problem. Like I was the one embarrassing him. Like he wasn't the one who had humiliated me first. I didn't even think. I just moved. My fingers curled around the nearest thing, my glass of sweet tea. And before I could stop myself, I dumped the entire thing over his head. The yard erupted. Someone gasped. Someone laughed. Daniel staggered back, sputtering, ice cubes sliding down his face, dripping from his hair, soaking into his shirt. His beard dropped to the grass. He blinked at me, stunned. I could feel every single eye in the yard locked on me. I could hear the whispers, the murmurs, the shock rippling through the crowd. But all I cared about was him. And for the first time in months, I saw him clearly. Not the man I had loved. Not the man I had trusted. Just a liar. A coward. Someone who didn't deserve me. I took a breath, stood taller. Then, in a voice steadier than I thought possible, I said, "You're the one who's just a bump in the road, Daniel. I'm done." And with that, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The second I turned away from Daniel, it was like something clicked inside me, like all the weight I had been carrying for months, maybe even years, vanished. I walked past the long picnic tables, past the wide-eyed stares, past the whispers that chased me across the yard. I kept my head high, kept my back straight. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't care what anyone thought. "Emily," Daniel's voice rang out behind me. I heard the shock, the panic in it now. "Come on. Don't be like that. Don't be like that." Like I was the one acting out. Like I was overreacting. Like he hadn't just thrown away 10 years of marriage and expected me to stand there and take it. I didn't stop walking. I didn't even slow down. Then I felt a hand on my arm, his hand, and my whole body went rigid. "Emily, let's talk." I wrenched free so fast he actually stumbled back. And when I turned, I wasn't quiet anymore. "You don't get to touch me." My voice shook with anger, with something deeper, something I wasn't even sure had a name. "You don't get to talk to me. You don't get anything from me. Not anymore." Daniel's mouth opened, then shut. For the first time, I saw something close to fear in his eyes. And maybe, just maybe, that's when he realized. He had lost me. For good. The crowd was silent now. People were holding their breath, waiting, watching. I saw my mom in the crowd, hands clutched to her chest. My dad standing stiffly beside her. My aunts and uncles frozen in place. But I only had eyes for Daniel. He let out a breath, shaking his head. "This is embarrassing, Em." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "For you, maybe." His jaw tensed. "We should go somewhere private." "Why?" I shot back. "So you can gaslight me? Try to make me feel crazy." I tilted my head. "Or maybe you just don't want anyone else hearing what a cheating, lying coward you are." His face went red. "It wasn't serious, Emily." I stared at him. Not serious. I was so tired. So done. "I was serious," I said quietly. "I was serious about us. About you. About everything." I swallowed. "And you threw it all away for what? Some meaningless affair." Daniel exhaled through his nose, pinching the bridge like I was giving him a headache. "I didn't throw anything away. You're being dramatic." Dramatic. I felt something inside me go cold. That was it. That was the moment. Because right then, right there, I knew he wasn't sorry. Not for cheating. Not for lying. Not for hurting me. Daniel was only sorry he got caught. And I wasn't wasting another second of my life on him. I squared my shoulders, lifted my chin, and said, "We're done." Daniel's expression cracked. Just for a second. Then he scoffed, shaking his head. "Emily." I didn't wait to hear whatever excuse he was about to make. I turned and walked straight to Olivia. She was already waiting for me, already stepping forward, already wrapping an arm around my shoulders like she had known all along that this moment was coming. "Let's go," she said softly. And I let her lead me away. I didn't cry. I didn't break down in the car. I didn't beg for answers that I already knew didn't matter. Instead, I stared out the window, watching the trees blur past, feeling something settle deep inside my chest. I should have felt empty. But I didn't. I should have felt shattered. But I didn't. Instead, I felt clear-headed for the first time in a long, long time. When we got to my house, Olivia parked in the driveway and turned to me. "What do you need?" she asked. I thought about it. Then I pulled my phone out of my purse, opened my contacts, and blocked Daniel's number. I deleted our old messages. I pulled off my wedding ring. And when I looked up at Olivia, I smiled. "I think I'm good," I said. She studied me for a second, then grinned. "Hell yeah, you are." In the days that followed, the messages started. From Daniel. From his mother. From people in the family who thought I should have handled it differently. I ignored all of them. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about what other people thought. For the first time, I wasn't trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect woman, the perfect anything. For the first time, I was just me. And that was enough. The family reunion ended, but the aftermath lingered. People talked. Of course they did. But what surprised me the most was that they were on my side. Not his. Aunt Linda sent me a message. "I should have told you sooner. You deserved better." My cousin Jason called, "You're a badass, Em." Seriously. Even Daniel's own sister reached out, "If you ever need anything, I'm here." And Daniel? He faded away. Just like a bump in the road. One evening, about 2 weeks later, I sat on my porch, sipping tea, watching the sun dip below the trees. And for the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt light. Like I had finally let go. I wasn't just Daniel's wife. I wasn't just someone's second choice. I wasn't just a bump in the road. I was me. And I was walking forward, without looking back.